Welcome to Dhamma USA's Thursday guest lecture series. Today we are honored to present lecture number 41, featuring a topic that holds a great significance for all of us, which is navigating the path to Nibbāṇa, practical steps for transformation, part 3. This series aims to benefit the enthusiastic learners of Buddhism, and we extend a warm invitation to all lay Buddhist scholars and practitioners to be part of this enlightening journey. Our esteemed guest speaker today is a medical doctor and a meditation practitioner who would like to remain anonymous. More information about her work can be found at YouTube channel called Be My Best Movement. Please visit our website at dhammausa.org for her channel links. Without further delay, I invite our guest speaker to begin our lecture this evening. We encourage active participation from all attendees, so feel free to ask questions and share your thoughts in the comment section.
Hi, everyone. So today is part 3 of our course of conversations. So let's begin, because today is going to be a little complicated in what I have to say. I always like to start by doing a recap so that, we are all on the same wavelength. So what we are going to talk about is the practical steps that we need to take in order to attain Nibbāṇa. So for that, we have to kind of have an understanding what Nibbāṇa is, and that is training our mind to see things as they truly are. Training our mind to see things as they truly are. It's like a very simplified explanation of what Nibbāṇa is. So we talked about that it's important to start the journey now. You have to stay focused. You have to be patient. And yes, we can attain Nibbāṇa. It's all common sense. And this is another thing that I personally learned. It's a lot easier to train our mind when we think in our own native language. And we learned that there were 4 stages. And the very first stage is you have to learn to be the best person you can be. And it is an ongoing thing that we have to do. And part of it is really taking care of our body with small, healthy meals, getting adequate sleep, drinking enough water. And also in the Karaniya Metta Sutra, at the very first verse, they talk about not having too many responsibilities. And we all know about that one. And then, of course, nowadays we have this crazy stuff like social media and TV, which we need to come out of. From a more important point of view, it's important to work on our 5 precepts. That is step 1, learning to be the best person you can be. Step 2 is training our mind to be the best tool it can be. Remember, we said that our mind is like a stormy ocean, and there are techniques of samatha meditation which we have to use in order to calm our mind. And as I said, that kind of meditation is called samatha meditation, methods of calming our mind. And then we have the more important one, in my opinion, where we have to learn to observe our own mind and contemplate about what we saw, which is called vipassana. So Then we talked about how we are actually going to embark on the journey. And we did, in fact, embark on the journey, where in this, the part 3, that's today and tomorrow, next Thursday, we'll be talking about more concepts. Next, we'll talk about how do we observe whether these concepts are accurate, and then it's a matter of just training our mind and to see things as they truly are. So one of the main things that we learned in the previous week was that our body, we have two main parts. We have a mind and a body. And then we went on to learn that our body is made out of 4 elements: solids, liquids, air, energy, and everything else, that is everybody else, trees, inanimate objects, the earth, everything is also made out of the same 4 elements. So today, our focus, now that we've learned a lot about our body, today we will focus on the mind. There'll be quite a lot of theoretical knowledge, but I found it easier and useful once I know that, in order to continue the meditation. And some of my friends have told me that it's not that important, but for me it was. So I thought I will share that part with you. So today's focus is on the mind. So the first thing I want to share with you is, how does our mind work? In the Buddhist philosophy, I'm sure we all have heard of something called Abhidhamma, which has 7 volumes, and it's all about how the mind works. And these are a little bit of facts, a few facts that will help us in our journey. So it's not like trying to understand the whole of Abhidhamma, it's just trying to understand a few things that will help us go on our own journey of trying to attain Nibbāṇa. So the very first thing, if you there's a couple of slides and I will point them out as we go, and this is one of them. Remember this picture, please. So basically, we can have only one thought at a time, and then in a very short time, a fraction of a second, it disappears and is replaced by another thought. So this is what happens to us throughout our lifetime. One thought at a time, they are constantly changing and they are replaced by another thought. So really, there is nothing permanent in our mind. Okay. Now, this is just an interesting fact. The very first thought while we are in the womb is called the pratisandhisita, just in case you have heard of it. And when we are quietly not doing anything, those thoughts are called bhavangasita. And the last thought that we get before we die is called the chutisita. Then this is all little bits of from Abhidhamma. And then when we get some data from the outside, it creates a series of thoughts. And those are called chitta vidya. Chitta means the mind, okay? Sorry, means thoughts. So for every one of those, you can have up to 17. So for example, if we see a red car, that's what will happen. If we hear a car, that's what will happen. If we think of a car, that's what will happen. A chitta vidya will occur. Now, from here, it becomes a little bit easier for us to understand. So every thought has companions. So the thought is in red and the companions are in blue. And in Abhidhamma, they talk about 52 companions, okay? And out of these, we can divide them into three. One is called Vedana, which is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings. And the other is called Sanya, which is perception. Now, all the other 50, we can put them together and it's called Sanskara. After trying to figure it out myself, I decided to have this image in my head and it made things a lot easier. Imagine a whole bunch of people in an office. So they have two rooms. In the first room, there's three people that are seated, which is Vijnana, which is consciousness, feelings, and perceptions. Those three guys are in one room. And in the other room, all the other 50 people and a boss is there. Okay. So that second room with 50 members is called, let's call it the Department of Sanskara. Remember, there were 50 people in there. So in the Department of Sanskara, there are little teams. There's a good deeds team, there's a bad deeds team, and there are some other folks. One of them is called Chetana, which is volition, and there is another one called Tanha, which is desire. So now that we have this understanding, there's two rooms, there's three people in one room, and then all the other guys with a boss is in the second room. Let's see how these guys work together. So according to Abhidhamma, when we are looking at something, some data comes from, let's say, how we look at a yellow rose, light rays from the rose is going to get into the eye, and then this data is collected and taken over to the mind. So the eye is a sense organ. The very first thing that happens when this data comes in is it's accepted, like somebody stamps it and then accepts the file, and that person is called Vijnana or consciousness. Then what happens? Vijnana, once it accepts the data, sends it and hands it over to someone called Sanya or perception. And what they do is they start comparing this new data with the old data they have, which we could call the memory, and say, aha, this looks like a yellow rose, right? So that's the job of perception. And then once perception has done its job, it hands it over to someone called Vedana, whose job is to sort everything into three folders. One tray is called pleasant, the other is called unpleasant, and the third is called neutral. So now we know what these three guys do. Now let's focus on that big department called Sanskara. And there is one guy that is called Chetana or volition. And this guy, Chetana, thinks that he has a big boss. Okay? You will understand a lot more as we connect the dots in part 4. But for now, Chetan as the boss is really an illusion called me. Okay? And Chetana thinks that he has to please this boss. And not only that, Chetana runs over and controls 3 project managers. So whenever something comes through, he can use 3 project managers. What are they? A thought, physical activity, or speech. Okay? But if you really think about these new project managers, they are really new thoughts. And what happens? They in turn create new actions. Okay? So, when new action happens, it keeps creating more data and gives rise to more results or effects. Actions cause effects. Okay? And now at this point, we commonly call something called karma. Karma is action. Karma is action, and the effects of that action is called karma vipaka. So, two very important words. The action is called karma, and the results or effects is called karma vipaka. So remember those 3 project managers, they created more data, and now this data is received by our sense organs. And remember in the second one, we talked about the sense organs. There's 5 of them. And in the Buddhist philosophy, we consider the mind as a sense organ to receive thoughts. And what happens to these guys? The sense organs, once they get the data, sends it to Vijnana officers, and each one has a unique Vijnana officer, and then that whole cycle that we talked about continues. Okay? So now we talked about how Chetana behaves in this department of sanskara and how he is constantly trying to please this boss that is really an illusion called me. There is another person that is tanha, which is craving or desire. That's also a very important person. And we'll call her a secretary. And she also thinks that she has a big boss. That's the illusion called me. Now, she thinks she has 2 duties. One is to please her boss all the time, and the second is to keep her boss going forever. So, these 2 guys, which is, So, in order for her to carry on her duties, what she does is Tanha goes on to the first room. Remember, there was feelings or Vedana there, and says, please give me all the pleasant feeling files. And then she tries to grab them and hold on to them. So that holding on to pleasant feelings, well, we have a name for that, and that's called upadana or attachments. Now, this is the team that's at work all the time. That is Chetana, Tanha. What does happens? Tanha, which is cravings, remember she went and got all the pleasant feeling files. So she hands them over to Chetana and says, please, please get us more of these pleasant feelings. And what does Chetana do? Chetana runs over to the 3 project managers and say, hey, work at this and try to get me more pleasant feelings. And then at the same time says, hey, try to avoid unpleasant feelings. So what these 3 project managers do is they keep creating new thoughts, new actions, and new ways of talking in order to achieve 2 main things, which is try to get more pleasant experiences for the boss and try to avoid unpleasant feelings for this so-called boss that is really an illusion called me. So this way I got to understand things a lot easier. So remember, Tanha had two main tasks. One was to keep the boss happy, and the other was to try to keep the boss alive forever. So what happens is Tanha goes and tell consciousness, hey, we have to keep our boss alive forever. So as we go through life and then end our life, the last thought, which is the Chutisita, at that moment has a connection, and that is handed over by consciousness to the new baby while it is still in the womb, and that starts a new set of activities, and that's how we keep living from one birth to another. Venerable Hempirigedara ஞானசிகத்தேரோ described it in a way that we can easily understand, or at least I did. He talked about a set of bulbs. So there is electricity going along, and then as it comes to the first bulb, it shines, and then it gets shut off, and then it goes to the next bulb, and that shines. So likewise, that is how we have a series of births. Again, most of this is not quite needed to attain Nibbāṇa, but it is interesting, and it helps us to understand the foundation of what we are talking about. So once the baby inside our womb starts getting that consciousness into the fetus, a new body and new mind is formed, and then it starts creating new sense organs, total of 6, and then this cycle continues. So the biggest problem we have, or the question in front of us, is how do we stop this cycle? Well, it's easy. And we will learn more about this in part 4. But really, all we have to do is to retire this boss, which is an illusion called me. And then when the boss is not there, Chetana can retire, and also Tanha can retire. So then the cycle stops. Now, this is something you probably have heard of, which is called the 5 aggregates. They've got names for what we talked about. So, for example, the yellow rose is called Rupa. And then we talked about companions to a thought, which is Vedana. We know who that is. That is pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feelings. Sanya, which is perception. And Sanskara is the rest of the team in the department of Sanskara. Okay, and that one includes Chetana. And then in the first room, we had someone called Vijnana, which is consciousness. So these are mind objects, and this is outside objects, or we call it Rupa. We'll talk a little bit more about Rupa in the next slide, but remember these 5 words: Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sanskara, Vijnana, and these 5 are called 5 aggregates or Panchaskandha. So this is something you will hear over and over again. Now, a word about Rupa. In Sinhala language, Rupa has a different meaning, but in Abhidhamma, it talks about Rupa has a much broader meaning. It means outside objects plus our sense organs. outside objects plus our sense organs. So, for example, yellow rose, there is the light plus the eye. Or we could say if we hear a sound of a car, that will be a sound plus the ear. So the two together are called rupa. Okay. So initially this puzzled me, and then I realized if you really think about it, it's only when we are looking at the yellow rose that we are aware of our eye. Other times we don't really pay attention to it. So hence the reason those two have been lumped together. So it makes logical sense. Okay. So we talked about data being received by the sense organs, right? That was something we saw before. Now, once the data is received by the sense organs, it was accepted by vijnana, or consciousness, and then uh, it, the sanya or perception looked at this data, compared it, and figured out, this is what it is. So that is perception of the yellow rose. And then the next table, Vedana or feelings, decided, oh, I love this yellow rose. So that was a pleasant feeling. Or if it is like a dead yellow rose, it might be an unpleasant or a neutral feeling. So consciousness, perception, feeling. So it went through this process. Now, this is the most important thing you have to understand if you forgot all of that. It came, the data was processed, and then it's done. So when we get more data, it's this process, but it's a new process. So at the end of it, what we have to realize is this is a constantly changing process, and it is not a permanent thing. And then if we extend it further, we can say Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sanskara, Vijnana, they are impermanent or transient and are constantly changing. Okay, so the 5 aggregates are impermanent or transient and are constantly changing. And now you can kind of see in what that means. If you forgot everything I said, what you have to understand and conclude is that there is nothing permanent in this process. We get data, we evaluate it, and then it's done. We get more data, we evaluate it, then it's done. So it is not a permanent thing, it is a process. Okay, good. We finished that in 30 minutes. I'm happy. So, at the beginning, I said we will understand a series of concepts, and then now we have to be like scientists, remember? And then try to see, is this really true? And we have to make that decision. Okay, so let's look at how are we going to observe these. And that we do by meditation. And as I said, little by little, we will add little modules to your meditation system so that at the end of it, you will have like a nice system where you can contemplate about each of these, and the whole thing takes less than 30 minutes a day. And if you keep doing it, your understanding of this whole thing will increase. So, like last time, sit comfortably, be in a safe place, and please make sure all your urgent stuff is done, otherwise, your mind won't be calm. And then you try to relax. Traditionally, in Sri Lanka, we pay homage to Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and then we recite the 5 precepts. This is something I personally do and has helped me a great deal, which is Take a deep breath, let it out, and then tell your mind, okay, for the next 30 minutes, I will put aside all my stresses, worries, my things to do list, and this 30 minutes, I'm going to focus on the training of my own mind. So, our mind is like a stormy ocean. So, the first step we have to do is to calm the mind. And we talked about different techniques like metta meditation or breath meditation. And in the metta meditation, I did mention that it is better if you wish each part of your body well without using the word my brain, my face, and you will understand it better when we go to part 4. But for now, try to just use may the brain be well, may the face be well, so on and so forth. Either way, your goal is to calm your mind as much as you can. Okay, don't spend too much time doing this because our real thing is the next step, which is the contemplation. And we talked about this last time. You start by looking at your own body and realizing that each part of your body is made out of 4 main elements. And please use a language that is familiar to you rather than words that do not mean anything to you. Okay, so use your native language. Next, you contemplate about someone else, and then a tree, an inanimate object, the whole earth, and realize, wow, everything is made out of the same 4 elements. So now that's where we were. Now let's look at how do we evaluate what we learned today. So one of the things that we have to evaluate is we said we get data from the outside world into our body via 5 sense organs. And then it is the mind that, number one, decides what it is, which is perception. And then number two, decide is it a pleasant, unpleasant, or a neutral feeling? And number three, get those project managers to create action, right? So now we have to see, is this really true? Is this really happening in our own body? How do we meditate on that? So the starting point for that part, that module, is a little bit of anapana or breath meditation. We talked at length about how to do that in the part 2 of this series. So basically, you close your eyes and then you take a deep breath, try to identify where the breath hits, and then you try to observe the breath go up and down. Okay, multiple methods. This is one. Now you just stay like that. And while you're waiting, let's say you heard the sound of a car, and then pay attention. What you will say is yes, it is the ear that heard the sound, but the ear didn't know how to interpret it. That came from the mind. So you basically listen to different sounds and see how you hear the sound from the ear, but the ear has no role in deciphering what it was, and that was done by the mind. So that way we can conclude what we theoretically learned. Okay, so that is one module of meditation. And you don't have to do them like, each one in one sitting. Just go through the process. Okay, next one. We learn that a thought comes, stays in the mind for a very short time, and then is replaced by another thought, right? So, this observation of this is called Chittanupassana, and what you can do it in multiple settings, but if you are doing it during meditation, actually at the beginning it's very easy, because whenever we try to focus we get 2000 thoughts coming through, so you do know. And if you start paying attention, it's like a 2-year old running around all over the place, going here thinking about what to cook today, and that you have to get a gift for your friend, and so on and so forth. It's like a crazy place. So, but now pay attention. It is, in fact, very funny to see how many thoughts come and how quickly they go. So, merely by observing your thoughts, you can conclude, yes, thoughts are transient and they don't last for long. Okay, so one thought at a time, constantly changing, and therefore there is nothing permanent in our mind. So you can easily do that during your meditation. Now, something happens as you continue to meditate. Your mind settles down. Okay, your mind gets trained to be in one place, and then it becomes very still. So when it becomes very still and you are waiting to see, okay, does the mind keep moving, and you really can't see movement anymore. If you come to that stage, which you will, if you keep doing this, your mind will calm down, and it'll become so calm that it stops moving literally and stays there. And when that happens, we can't do this part of our observation. And that's when you should do it, when you're out and about. Let's say in the morning when you have a cup of tea, just for a few minutes, watch your mind and all the ridiculous ways that it moves around, talks to itself, and does all this thinking. So that way, you could once again conclude, yes, we get only one thought at a time, and yes, it is constantly changing. So there are two ways you can look at this. One, during meditation; the other, let's say, when you're having a cup of tea, and just observing your own mind to see how it keeps running around all over the place. All right. Now, remember in when we were talking about a thought and companions to a thought, and how we see a yellow rose, of the three people that were in the first room. Oh, I have slides on those. So basically, the thought, companions to the thought, and then we talked about Vedana, Sanya, and Sanskara. So these are the three people in that room, right? So the data was brought in, was accepted by Vijnana or consciousness, and then was handed over to perception to decipher what this data meant. And then we had the third person in the room, that is Vedana or feelings, and his job was to put these into three trays, right? And his three trays were: number one, pleasant feelings. We've all had them, whether you were eating some ice cream or looking at a beautiful rose, or you had, graduated from med school, or was with a loved one. All these are pleasant feelings. What's the other category? Is unpleasant feelings, like TV telling all the horrible news, or we get news about a loved one falling sick, or we are overwhelmed with work. So all these are unpleasant feelings. And then, of course, we have neutral feelings. So how do we observe that part and confirm that, yes, these things are also transient? It's hard to do that practically when you are seated meditating, but it is very easy to do it if you pause for a few minutes or say, in this 1 hour, I'll pay attention to my feelings. Okay, so when you are just running around doing stuff, just for like 5-10 minutes, watch the different feelings that go through your mind, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and label them. And that is one form of Buddhist mindfulness. Now, we'll talk a lot more about Buddhist mindfulness, which is a tool like a Swiss Army tool because it has multiple ways we can use that in order to improve our training. Um, but this is one way where you again observe your own feelings as they come. And as you contemplate and observe this, you will notice one fact, which is that they too are transient. So that is what you will conclude. But don't take my word. You have to observe it and you have to conclude that, not me. Okay? All right. So that is the last slide I have. But as I always like to say, please stay humble because every day keep learning and contemplating, and more important, listening to others and having a conversation with them because you can learn and improve your own techniques and learn to be a better person. And also, I truly believe that we need to help and nurture each other as we go through this on this journey. Now, next, which is the last part, we will talk about impermanence, suffering, and also a concept called Sakkaya Ditthi and Anatta. And I will end by talking about Buddhist mindfulness. Okay? Before I open up for questions, I realized in my last part, uh, I didn't answer one of the questions quite correctly. So I want to clarify that first and also tell you about that URL that I have at the bottom, which is tinyurl.com/path to Nibbāṇa, where I have created the same concepts but smaller, shorter videos so that if you are busy, they'll be easier. But it's more or less the same set of slides. So that's one other thing I want to share. So the question had to do with metta meditation. So now, metta meditation, we were going to use it as a way to train our mind to be the best tool it can be. Remember, our mind is like a stormy ocean when we start meditating, and we want to make it like a calm lake. And one of the things that we were going to use for this was compassion meditation. So now I'm going to share some personal observations that I have and techniques that I use in order to calm our mind, which is when we are overwhelmed with unpleasant feelings. It could be something at work or some kind of a failure. I vividly remember one time about a couple of years ago where I put my heart and soul into a project which went on for like 8 months. I worked very long hours and was hoping to help a large number of Sri Lankans in rural areas. And it was a total flop. It didn't work out. So that kind of like things that you worked for a long time and then nothing happens, you feel horrible. And then your mind is not like a stormy ocean, it's like a hurricane. So, in that situation, how do we calm our mind? So, these are practical things that you have to do before and when these things happen. These are some techniques that I personally have used. Number one, feel free and have a good cry. It really helps. And all my life, I've used that technique called journaling, and I outlined it, I think, in part one or two. Please listen to that again. It is really a helpful thing. And of course, if you are lucky enough to have some good friends, just pour your heart out. It really helps. Now, this is when your mind is like a hurricane, okay? And then, of course, you need quiet time. We think by watching social media or watching something on TV, this awful feeling that we have from this unpleasant experience will disappear. No, what you are doing is you are suppressing it, and that never works. So please open it out some way and then keep working at it. Journal daily, cry daily, talk to your friends daily. It will take quite some time for you to calm yourself down, but you have to calm yourself down. And then meditation will help when you are a little bit calmer. Practically speaking, once you are really mastered the art of meditation, yes, you can use it. But first, you may have to use these other techniques to get there, okay? And this is what the question was about metta meditation. And I mentioned that it is best to say the face, the brain, the chest, so on and so forth when we are trying to do metta meditation, because metta meditation really helps. And in those hurricane moments, just wish yourself well, okay? Don't try to separate the mind and the body, and keep wishing yourself well over and over and over. It's nice if you can spread that to the world, but when you are in the hurricane mode, forget the world for a little while and try to use it to calm yourself over and over again. Wish yourself well and forget separation of the mind and body. So that is one thing I want to share with you. If your mind is like a hurricane, I'm not talking stormy ocean, I'm talking hurricane mood. So that's, I thought, was a better answer than what I gave when somebody asked about it in part two. Now I will be very happy to answer any other questions you had.
Thank you, Doctor, for the enlightening lecture and sharing your profound wisdom with us today. I think we have some questions. The first one is from Sukma. Why, when someone makes a vow to attain in Nibbāṇa in this lifetime, their meditation is very flourishing and developing to the highest peak?
Why? Okay. Um, I'll tell you in a very simplified way something. Whether we are going to make a cake, or whether we are going to paint something or read a book, what is the first thing we do? We make a decision that we are going to do something. And that's when we are successful. And this is no different. So, first thing you have to do is to make up your mind and make a determination. Yes, I am going to attain Nibbāna. Then everything will fall into place. And another thing, in the very first lecture, the very first slide I mentioned was have a why. Why do you want to attain Nibbāna? Because the stronger the why, the higher the chances you stick with this and go on this journey. So, yes, making that determination is only then, and then only will it be successful.
The second question is, it is a blessing that, oh, that's an appreciation for you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, I think I skipped one. Okay. How does karma relate to the cycle of rebirth?
Yes. See, you may not have noticed it, and I didn't make much of I didn't get your attention to that. But there was a slide where we talked about the three project managers, and those were like Chetana wanted these three project managers to do something, which was either create a new thought, speak, or create a physical action. And that action the three project managers do, that is called karma. I know we use it, I think, slightly differently when we talk about karma, but the action is the correct word for karma. The action will give rise to a result, right? Remember in the very first part or the second part we talked about is, again, if we go to McDonald's and keep eating a lot of hamburgers, which is an action, what will happen? We will become obese, right? That's a result. So if we look at it that way, karma, which is action or eating the hamburgers, will give rise to an effect, which is us getting obese, and that is called karma vipaka. So the more we create more results, that in turn, if you go back and see, will create more data for us to use, which will come through our sense organs, and then that creates the cycle to continue. That creates the cycle to continue. So that is how karma relates to cycle of birth, rebirth, in a very simplified way. At least that's the way that I could understand it. I hope it is helpful.
How can one better cope with constant unpleasant bandana from excessive heat and humidity, which exacerbates existing chronic health symptoms and affects
Yeah,
concentration during meditation?
yes. Um, I look at things in a very practical way. That's why I think in the first one or the second one I mentioned, it's important for us to be materialistically as comfortable as we can, because it is very hard for us to concentrate uh, because we are novices at it. At one point, once you practice it for a long time, you can overcome them. But at the beginning, it is very important. And even in the middle, like now, I've been meditating for a very long time. I first was my parents, I'm very grateful for them. They took us to a meditation retreat when we were like 9 years old. Didn't like to go, but then we were forced to go. So uh, I've been meditating since then, and now I have gray hair. So, but the issue is, the more you practice, the better you become, and then you can overcome that and focus your mind. But at the beginning, please make sure that you are comfortable. Make sure that all the things you have to do are, urgent things are done, etc., etc. And if you are in a hurricane mode, follow those techniques so that your mind is a little bit calmer to embark on the second contemplative part. I don't think we can just, at the beginning, um, try to think, okay, I'm in severe pain, I have these 2,000 urgent things to do, I'm going to start contemplating and attain Nibbāṇa. I don't think it's a practical thing to do. at least not in my life.
Mhm.
So look within you, look at who you are on that day, at that moment, and decide what should I do next. So it's a very individualized thing, but it is a very important thing. And don't get discouraged because every day you will be better at it. So keep doing even a little bit and don't start putting yourself down. You will get there. I know for a fact you will. You just have to keep trying.
The next question: if one is bound to the three poisons and three marks of existence, how can they realize and understand the Dhamma? And can only certain people understand the Dhamma while others can't?
I do not know about the three poisons. I don't know what that is. But if I were to generalize, there is um, you know, I'm a medical doctor, so I have, I've studied forever, and it's not the student's fault if someone doesn't understand a concept. I consider it that they haven't found the correct teacher. So keep reading, keep listening, and that way you will understand the concepts. Because once you understand the concepts, they are like common sense. There is nothing exotic here. It's absolute common sense. So Dhamma, by what that word, some people like make it a huge deal. Dhamma means the way things are, basically, and that's something we see every day. It's not something exotic. So there is no way that anybody will not understand the way things are. It's because they haven't found the correct teacher. So keep looking.
As we know, the cycle of transmigration is constant, resulting in rebirth and reincarnation. For an individual who has the desire to,
Ooh,
let's see, I think it's continued. For people who don't understand Nirvana, is how would you explain the definition of Nirvana in a concise context?
yes. To me, and I struggle with it, and I have realized what it means is seeing everything like training our mind to see things as they truly are. Training our mind to see things as they truly are. Just now, like a simple thing, like we might see a letter like the alphabet A in a piece of paper. If a child who doesn't know the alphabet looks at it, it's just a scribble. But once we learn that this particular shape means it's a A, and now when we look at that scribble, it starts making sense to us. It's the same with, with everything in this world. If we start realizing and if we start learning what things truly are, then when we look at something, it will make better sense. And the more we learn, the more we meditate, the more we contemplate about the few things that we talked about, the more we will start looking at things in a different way. And then once we perfect this, that's when we attain Nibbāṇa. So it's a very simple, common sense thing that we have to do. I hope that answers that question.
I think that's pretty much it for tonight.
And we did it. It's 7 o'clock, so perfect timing.
Yes. Um, I think with that, we conclude lecture of Dhamma USA's Thursday guest lecture series. We would like to extend our appreciation to all of our participants around the world for joining us in this endeavor. This marks the end of lecture of today's. Next week, we will continue with the same topic, part 4, and which is, I think it's the last part, correct?
Yes.
Um, Stay connected by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us on Facebook and other social media platforms to stay updated on upcoming lectures. Thank you all for being part of this wonderful event. We hope today's lecture has enriched your knowledge and inspired you on your journey towards inner peace and harmony. Let us continue to learn, grow, and support each other in our quest for greater understanding of Dhamma. Remember, our Dhamma journey doesn't end here. You can explore more Dhamma resources and updates on our website, dhammausa.org, or our blog, dhammausa.com. If you have any other questions or inquiries, feel free to contact us at info@dhammausa.com. Until we meet again next Thursday, may the Dhamma guide us all towards a peaceful and harmonious life. Thank you.